Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving into something a little different. It's about a scientific gathering that, wasn't your typical conference. It wasn't about patting each other on the back. It was more like a confrontation with a full-blown crisis. Really, it's a story about a hard-eyed reckoning between corporate profit and our health. And that quote you're seeing, it pretty much nails the mood at the Collegium Ramazzini's recent conference over in Carpi, Italy. This was not your standard academic snooze fest. No way. This was a call to arms from some of the world's absolute top health scientists. So let's get into it. Who is this group, the Collegium Ramazzini, and why was their meeting so incredibly urgent? Okay, so the Collegium Ramazzini, think of them as this international society of scientific experts, the best of the best in occupational and environmental health. Their whole mission, their entire focus, is to protect us, you and me, from the dangers lurking in our workplaces and in our environment. You could basically call them the world's scientific watchdog. And when I say global, I mean it. These folks flew in from all over the planet. We're talking India, Zambia, South Korea, Ghana, the list goes on. They all came together to share what they're finding out there. These are the people on the absolute front lines, studying that messy, complicated collision between industry, our changing climate, and, well, our own bodies. But here's the really crucial part, what makes them different. Their mission isn't just to publish a paper that sits in some dusty academic journal. They're actively fighting to take that hard-won evidence and slap it down on the policy table. They want to make sure it actually changes the rules, the very rules that are supposed to keep us safe. All right, so let's look at the first major theme that came out of this meeting, and it's a stark one. It turns out harm, it follows the path of least political resistance. Danger isn't random. It's not spread out evenly. It actually clusters in places where communities have the least amount of power to fight back.
Just look at lead poisoning, for example. In wealthier countries, we've pretty much solved this problem, right? Through regulations, resources, we got it done. But the thing is, the hazard didn't just disappear, it was shifted. It was moved to places like Kabwe, Zambia, where it's the children who are bearing the burden, in communities that just don't have the same power to push back.
And the experts of the conference have a name for this. They call it occupational justice. And this is a really big shift in thinking. The idea isn't just about, checking a box for minimum compliance. The goal, the primary goal, is making sure that health and safety are equitable for everyone, no matter where you work or live. It's not an afterthought, it's the entire point. Okay, now here's where things take a really disturbing twist. You know that urgent and absolutely necessary push for a green energy transition? Well, it seems it's sometimes being used, almost weaponized, to justify poisoning communities? Yeah, you heard that right. A really powerful case study for this came from a presentation on the stibnite mine in Idaho. So let's take a closer look at what's going on there. So this mine, it's going to be digging up antimony, which is used for national defense, and, of course, gold for corporate profit. But here's the kicker. The inevitable byproduct of all this is arsenic, a really nasty toxin. And I gotta tell you, the irony of poisoning a community in the name of a clean energy future was definitely not lost on anyone in that conference room. So what does this actually mean for the people, for the families living nearby? Well, it all boils down to one single terrifying number: 16. 16 years. That is how long it takes for a child living near that mine to absorb enough arsenic to hit their lifetime cancer risk. And let's be clear, this isn't some unfortunate accident. It's a calculated risk being justified by regulators who are literally reinterpreting safety standards to allow for more pollution. And all of this kind of reinterpretation of risk, it led to a really crucial debate at the conference about the very tools scientists use to even detect danger in the first place. The central question they were wrestling with was, are our scientific methods still up to the task? As we rush towards these new, faster, cheaper ways of testing things, are we actually making ourselves blind to real-world harm? Okay, so here's the conflict in a nutshell. On one hand, you have traditional animal studies. These studies show pretty clearly that common pesticides, like neonicotinoids, which are a type of insecticide, can cause developmental brain damage. But on the other hand, regulators are pushing really hard to replace those studies with these new, fast computational models. They call them new approach methodologies, or NAMs. The huge problem? Even major organizations like the OECD are warning that these new models have big gaps in coverage, meaning they might completely miss these kinds of neurodevelopmental problems. And look, we're not talking about minor issues here. The animal studies show actual physical, structural changes in brain tissue. They show altered reflexes in young animals. These are textbook signs of neurotoxicity that the new, faster methods might just not catch at all. So when you start to connect all these dots, right, you've got the geography of hazard, this greenwashing of risk, and now the potential weakening of our scientific tools, a really troubling picture starts to emerge. This isn't about a few isolated failures. This looks like something bigger. I mean, the sheer scale of the challenge is just staggering. The experts at the conference were talking about the 350,000 synthetic chemicals that have been introduced in just the last century. 350,000. And for most of them, we have very little data on how toxic they are. They're calling for proper safety laws to finally get a handle on this.
And yet, at the exact same time this is happening, we're seeing what some people are calling the Great Unmaking. While we're struggling to review new chemicals, the existing protections for old poisons we know are dangerous, we're talking about things like arsenic and lead, are actually being weakened or even thrown out altogether.
And this brings us right back to that hard-eyed reckoning we started with. This quote was really the core takeaway from those 3 days in Carpi. The argument being made is that this isn't just a series of mistakes or incompetence. It's that the system is being deliberately written wrong at a huge scale to accommodate extraction and profit, that it's working exactly as designed. So the scientists of the Collegium Ramazzini are digging their heels in. They're insisting that the evidence has to matter. They're sounding the alarm loud and clear, and they're leaving all of us with a really critical question to think about. What happens when the rules that are supposed to protect our health are actually designed to fail?